All right, let's take a look at Revelation chapter 13. We hear the following. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on its horns, and a blasphemous name on its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. One of the heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it? And the beast was given a mouth, uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Also it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them, and authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation, and all who dwell on the earth will worship it. Everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with a sword must he be slain. Here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all authority of the first beast in its presence, and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. It performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of the people, and by the signs it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast. It deceives those who dwell on the earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword, yet lived. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak, and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has that mark, that is, the name of the beast, or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So as we take a look then at Revelation chapter 13, what we see are 2 different beasts, right? We have the first beast that rises out of the sea with 10 horns, 7 heads, and 10 diadems, and a blasphemous name on its heads, looking like a leopard with feet like a bear's. All right, let's break it down. So first off, this beast is a callback to Daniel chapter 7, where Daniel himself has a vision of this beast. Right? Notice again the similarities that we see here. Right? We have this beast that comes out of the sea. We're going to see one that's going to come out of the earth here in a second, and how it is that they distract and destroy the people of the earth, all under the control of the dragon. So let's talk about this. First off, notice the similarities that the beast out of the sea has with the dragon. Right? 10 horns, 7 heads, showing that it works for the beast and it thinks it has the true power over the earth. The difference becomes the diadems that we see mentioned on the heads of the dragon are now on the horns of this beast, showing that it does not actually have that great power. Right? The important thing to keep in mind is that the dragon has control over this beast out of the sea. The interesting thing is this beast might think that they have true control and true power, but its power comes from the dragon, as the head is the seat of intelligence, right? So with the diadem sitting directly on the head of the dragon, it shows that it is the one that has that true power. So this blasphemous name, right? The blasphemous name that it has means that the church and God is going to be ridiculed by these creatures. What we see going on then is that these beasts represent human authority that is used against the church and used against Christians. Right? This beast is going to do everything it can to attack the church, to bring down the Christians. Now the interesting thing, right, the text talks about how it is that this beast has a wounded head, right? And heads represent the leaders, and the fact that it has wounds show that these leaders will not last, but instead the kingdoms will rise and fall underneath the control of this beast. It becomes a great cycle. So we have John again, right? He is calling for the endurance of the saints, right? He's telling us that fallen mankind is going to be powerless to resist these beasts, even if they wanted to, right? And Christians are going to be attacked. We're going to be persecuted. Our faith is going to be mocked and undermined at every turn underneath the control of these beasts. But notice again, as John says, he has power for 42 months, right? Remember, that's just a representation of a short time. So let's talk about the second beast. All right, the second beast that rises out of the earth. So what we see in this description of the second beast, right? He has two horns. John describes him having two horns like a lamb, speaking like the dragon. Right, the two horns like a lamb shows that this beast has power, but it's also meek. Right, it has a lamb-like quality to it. Right, a docile quality, a kind of a shyness, maybe even. But all of these attempts are just for show because this beast works for the dragon. One of my commentators said something I think that was quite brilliant about these sections. They say that while the beast from the sea represents every tyranny by human power and enterprise, the beast from the earth represents religious tyranny. And I think this is a good way of looking at it. The first beast is the political beast. It represents how Satan is going to take over, attack, and control the political and secular realms of the world. The second beast, though, the beast that comes out of the earth, is going to be a religious beast, and one that is going to attempt to unify the religious nature of the world behind this false creature. Again, something to keep in mind, something to watch out for. And so it is that we see these beasts afflicting the earth. Again, as we wrap up this section, right, notice the attempts to worship the beast. Again, John warning against becoming a lukewarm church. Pay attention, look out for, watch out for that which is coming for us. He also tells us how it is that this beast is going to use religion to take a complete hold on all of mankind. Notice the religious beast is even going to do miracles in an attempt to cause others to fall away. Again, watch out for, take a look at, keep in mind the things that are around you. Because Satan is going to use these things to convince you otherwise. So, now we finally get to the infamous 666, right? The number of the beast, the mark of the beast. What does all of this mean? Well, before we jump into the number itself, we got to deal with this mark of the beast, right? So the mark of the beast, what it is, we're not entirely sure. It's either a visible or invisible mark. We're not entirely sure. But this mark would remind the beast who his followers are, and it would remind his followers of the same. Again, notice that they have the mark on their hand or on their head, right? Meaning that their actions are going to be blessed and protected by the beast. Right? In contrast, those who are not sealed may be persecuted by the world, even if we follow its laws. Right? This is an important thing to keep in mind, and people have been debating this back and forth all over the place. What does this mean? Does this mean that people who aren't Christians are going to get, barcodes or RFID chips embedded in them so that they can, buy and sell things? We're not entirely sure. John doesn't give us enough of a description to articulate this for sure. So, at any rate, right, the followers of the beast, right, those who are not Christian, those who aren't marked for Christ, are going to be marked for the beast. So what about this 666 idea? Well, the interesting thing is, in order to parse through this, a lot of scholars have kind of fallen in the belief that what John is getting at here is an ancient system of codes and numerology, right? The study of numbers, called Gematria. And I'll come back to this slide here in a second because it's kind of fun to do. But what Gematria was, it comes actually from the ancient Assyrian, Babylonian, Greek system. They all kind of threw all these things together. And it became adopted underneath the, if you will, the Hellenistic viewpoints, right? The becoming of Greek that influenced the Jewish faith after Alexander the Great came through. And the influences on Jewish culture are prevalent even up and through today. For example, the Hebrew word for alive is a word called chai, and using the Hebrew Gematria, it's composed of two different letters that add up to 18, which makes 18 a generally lucky number among Orthodox Jewish believers. But there's a couple of interesting things to note about this idea of Gematria. First off, if you write out Nero Caesar in Hebrew and you add up the numbers in Gematria, you get 666, which is curious in and of its own right. Another interesting thing is that this number 666 only appears 3 times in the entirety of the Bible. It appears here, obviously. It appears in 1 Kings, where Solomon receives 666 talents of gold a year as tribute, and also in Ezra, where he says that 666 descendants of Adoiakim returned from exile. Whether that has any significance, I'm not entirely sure, but what we see going on here, though, is that 666 is a number of imperfection. Again, remember, 6 wants to be like 7, but it can't quite get there, right? It's not perfect. And remember, when you put numbers together, they amplify their meanings, which means that this creature, this beast, wants to be like God, but can't quite get there, right? It falls short. Right? This is why that John says that he who has wisdom and understanding will need to look at this text. Again, like I continue to say, Revelation is really hard because what he's talking about, how it is that we interpret this, we still don't know. The general thought is that maybe John is talking about someone who will have a spiritual gift given to them by the Holy Spirit to be able to discern the Antichrist and Satan's minions as the last day comes. That's a possibility. It's one of the most popular possibilities, but the reality is we're not entirely sure. Now, if we were in class, we would have spent some time messing around with some English gematria just for fun. Just so you know, if you spell out my entire name, I only add up to 200. So obviously I'm not the Antichrist. But it might be some fun. The way that it works is you take the letters of your entire name. So some of you will have a harder time than others, but you simply add them up and you find your gematria number. So if you want to take some time, you can play around with that. You're going to want to pause the video so that you can have this slide up so you can see it. But as for me, I'm going to cut the recording here, and we will see you in our next chapter.